You know, if you want to see just how dumb and uneducated journalists are, you have to read news from the past. Like, read a couple of news from years before, and you can see just how bad and how wrong their predictions are. But not only that, the arrogance and the hubris and the way they present their opinions as if they are facts, it's astonishing. And here we have an article which is called 12 Reasons Why No One Should Ever Listen to Jordan Peterson Ever Again. So one of the most renowned clinical psychologists in the world, whose work is cited in many academic papers, is a person that no one should ever listen to them ever again. Meanwhile, you should actually listen to this rag. Most people probably don't even know what it is, because obviously they're going to be more informed. This article is from 2019. You can tell it's a rag by the way they manipulate and editorialize. And this is something that I noticed it's overwhelmingly done by the left in the media. But there are also YouTubers who do it. The Quartering is a good example, which is to have a thumbnail and present the person you're talking about in a disparaging way. It is a tactic that I personally do not like. I do think that it brings clickbait, but for some people like myself, if I see you do this, I will not read your article. I do not think you have anything important to say. If you have to, and I don't care what the person is, it can be AOC, it can be Hillary Clinton, it can be Obama. I genuinely do not care. If you need to do this, it means you don't have any other arguments to use. Like, you're already trying to emotionally manipulate me. Right? So I will look at you as a dishonest actor, like you're trying to induce this sentiment into me. Why can't you just present the facts and let me make up my own mind? How about that? So the reason I say that it's interesting to read articles from the past is that you can see with the issue number 1, let's start with the event that made him famous. His protest against Bill C-16, a bill that proposed to add gender identity and orientation to what is colloquially referred as protected classes in the Canadian Human Rights Act. If they fine me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this, and that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues. Jordan Peterson characterized the law as forced speech and formulated his protest as a fight for freedom of expression and against forceful suppression and control of speech. And then they go, well, actually, what the amendment really meant, blah, 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 and this is in 2019. Now, in 2023, we all know that there is a case in Canada where a father is facing a fine or jail time for misgendering their child. Okay? How did Jordan Peterson know this then? Look what a big brain he had. Maybe this is why. How could he have foreseen the future? You should hire him. You should hire him at your publication. You know what? Justin Trudeau needs to hire Jordan Peterson in the government because he can foresee things that will unfold even when the intelligentsia and the press is unable to figure it out. So yeah, like point number 1 was interesting. Point number 2, if you had paid any attention to Jordan Peterson, you might have heard him talk about the dangers of postmodern neo-Marxism. Not only is he not able to clearly define what he means with this, this is a tactic that I see leftists do all the time. Like, you can't clearly define something, so therefore, your criticism is inadequate. In other words, if I tell someone, hey, don't stick a metal rod in the electric socket, they will be like, but can you define what the electric socket is? Can you define what electricity is? And unless I give them the actual definition of electricity, they will be like, well, clearly you don't know anything, so I can stick it in the electric socket. That's not how the world works. Usually, human knowledge is spread into 3 things. Things we don't know, things we know but can't articulate, and things we know that we can articulate, right? So, like, for example, I do know that sticking a metal rod in the electric socket is bad. Now, I can't articulate as to why. I have a general understanding of how electricity works, but if I were to talk with a physician, he would tell that I know jack shit. But that doesn't mean that my advice is wrong. Same thing when someone says, hey, maybe you shouldn't smoke because you'll get cancer. They may not know the process through which smoking a cigarette causes cancer, but they do have the knowledge that it's bad. And of course, then there's also the fact that you can walk into the forest and you can see a snake. Now, you don't know if the snake is poisonous or not, but you will have the instinct not to poke at it, unless you're Steve Irwin. But if you're not Steve Irwin, we're going to be okay, I'm not poking at the snake. Is that an unreasonable thing to do, right? So you can criticize something without actually naming what it is. Now, I'm pretty sure that Jordan Peterson knows what woke ideology is. Donald Trump had a very good definition of it. It was any ideology that considers the United States to be evil and at the same time separates society based on a group of people, considering that some people are lesser than others. But yeah, I mean, it's basically applying the idea of Marxism, which is the struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. You're applying it to culture now. And it's the struggle between the minorities and the cisgender, heteronormative, straight, patriarchal white man. Is that a good definition? And by the way, this is coming in 2023, because this is the advantage of knowing the future. It's coming from a time, the most popular documentary of the year. Do you know what it's called? It's called What is a Woman? It was very popular on Twitter. You also have the US president nominating the first ever black female as a member of the Supreme Court of the United States, which doesn't know what a woman is. So, I don't know. I mean, if I shouldn't listen to Jordan Peterson because he can't give a clear definition of some philosophical theory, should I listen to all these other people that can't define stuff that I knew since I was in kindergarten? In fact, part of the documentary was to go to Africa, find one of the tribes there, and all of them knew what a woman is by some degree of magic. But then they went to other ideologues at universities and important people, and none of them knew. Scary stuff, interesting. Well, I guess, by the logic of this article, I should have listened to Jordan Peterson, but I should also not listen to all those other people who do not know definitions. Like, how can you talk about women's rights if you do not know what a woman is? Anyway, Jordan Peterson will happily rant about the evils of Marxism with any opportunity. However, he does not understand and severely misinterprets Marxist theory, and it goes with number 5 by saying he only read the Communist Manifesto in preparation for a debate. You don't need to read Mein Kampf in order not to be a Nazi. You don't need to read every single religious text out there in order to say that you're an atheist or you're not part of that particular religion. Like a Christian does not need to read the Legends of Olympus in order not to believe in Zeus. And even then, like, if you have a group of people that, let's say, you travel back in time and you find some religion doing human sacrifices, like, you don't need to actually read their texts in order to say, yeah, maybe this is not a good way of living. Regarding Marxism, you already have history. Like, you see what happened to all the other Marxist countries. But on top of that, the very claim that what are you trying to accomplish? Equality. Ugh. Why? I mean, I'm not equal to myself on how I used to be 5 years ago. Two brothers in a household are not equal to each other. Why should the lazy person be equally rewarded to the hardworking? The very notion of equality is something that bothers me. It is incompatible with the notion of freedom. I don't want to be equal. Right? Like, I'm pretty sure that, when you think, and by the way, when people think of Marxism, they think, oh, so myself and Jeff Bezos are going to be equal. Maybe, but it's not because you're going to get more wealth. It's because Jeff Bezos is going to be made as poor as you, and you're going to probably be made as poor as the homeless person, and then that's how everyone gets to be equal. With probably a little bit of an exception with the inner party members that are going to have a little bit more wealth than everyone else, but other than that, 90% of the population will probably be equally poor and miserable. In his magnum opus, Maps of Meaning, a bunch of his own sources directly contradicts the very claims he's using to make. He also ignores historical context, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe this is true, but like looking at the track record of all the other previous statements, I'm going to severely press X to doubt. In a Vice interview while discussing women in the workplace, he equates wearing makeup with sexual provocativeness and sexual displays. Is it not? Like, why do women wear makeup? Are we going to have this conversation? I would generally like to be educated on this. Why do women wear makeup? It's a good question. Why don't they wear makeup in the home? I mean, most of them don't, right? Maybe there are some that do. But like, why don't women wear makeup when they're sitting alone in the house? I genuinely don't know. Like, literally, I'm not a woman to be able to say these things. But I can ask a different question. If a woman wants to be sexually provocative, what does she do? Like, let's say she's at the workplace and she really likes Chad, which is her colleague. How does she behave in order to attract Chad's attention? Like, if she wants to. What are the things that she can do in order to do it? Because obviously, you know, human courtsmanship, as far as I know, is a little bit different, right? Like, women usually like to be approached, men do the approaching. There are exceptions, of course, but on general speaking, like if you go and you ask mom and dad how they met, I'm willing to bet. I'm not a betting man, but I think I will make money on this if I say that your father made the first step. Go ask your grandma then and grandfather. Maybe, you know, in the future things will be different, but up until now, this is how it was. Like, what I'm saying up until now wasn't very controversial, right? So, like, the man has to make the first step, like, he approaches, and the woman gets approached. So it goes without saying that there may be different tactics that are used by the gender. See, lovely conversation. 2023, we can talk about gender. What is gender? Gender is the social expectation, right? The pressure that society puts. Okay, so there is a pressure on the man to do certain things and a pressure on the woman to do things in a different way. So, how does a woman which likes Chad behave at the workplace in order to try to attract Chad? Jordan Peterson is almost impossible to pin down on any political subject. Oh, don't worry about it. It's very easy to pin down now. He's screaming on Twitter. Angry man screams at the sky. Last time I checked, he was screaming at Trudeau. Like, oh, you take my car, Trudeau, and you'll see what happens. Jordan Peterson is almost impossible to pin down. He uses his platform to actively laud and promote his doctoratus, ludicrous albeit. Yeah, oh my God. Can you imagine this? Someone promoting their own family? Oh, on their personal Twitter account, nevertheless. Holy shit. I'm not convinced. I have read the article, but I'm not convinced. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you have been convinced. I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.